This is Greg Graham's. This is his house. He has lived here his whole life, way over 60 years. His house has lots of rooms, filled with all kinds of collectibles. He likes to find the best of whatever he is collecting. Hoarder? Collector? You be the judge. There are a lot of houses on TV, but none quite like this. His sons Jay and Brian grew up here, and now work with him. Welcome to the Graham's house. Volo, House of Cars. It's a new day at Volo Auto Museum, and with a house full of classics and convertibles, Jay has only one thing on his mind.
Hey, Brenda, I got something I need to tell you.
Oh, boy.
I need to get more inventory.
You always need more inventory, and Grandpa and his stuff.
Oh, you remember this? I got that down in Oklahoma.
Oh, that's when you spent over $1 million, isn't it?
That's what's coming up again. I need that $1 million.
I can already see the paperwork.
I'll let you take this car to the bank. If that makes it any easier for you.
Grandpa's good with this?
Oh, yeah, you know he is.
Fair enough. Let's get a dealer plate.
Think $1 million will fit in the trunk?
I'll get large bills.
All right, sounds good.
It's 10 a.m. and the boys are late for their meeting with Dad, but they aren't too concerned.
What time do you think Dad's gonna show up to the 10 o'clock meeting today?
15 minutes as usual.
Oh,
Hey, our meeting started at 10 o'clock, not 10:10. Did someone change this?
You always get here at 10:15. We figured we were safe getting here at 10 after
we
10.
were 5 minutes early.
Well, usually if I'm late, I'm working, so I don't want to hear any more about that. We got a lot of work to do this morning. We got a lot to go over. Jay, tell me, what do you got for me this week?
My big trip down to Oklahoma's coming up this week. High-end Larry, he rounds up all these cars for me. I give him a little commission when I buy a car.
Isn't that where your secret spot
Yeah,
is,
that's
too?
my secret spot. I've gotten some great cars from a guy down there that restores high-end, rare muscle cars. Does about 1 or 2 a year. This building is nondescript. There's no gas pumps out front, no car memorabilia of any kind. Nobody knows that he's there. In addition to that, I'm going to an event in Wichita, Kansas at the Walzer Auto Group. It's like a grand opening black tie party for one of their new stores. The $1 Million Car Club's bringing all these high-end cars to be on display. And
Is that the one that they're bringing, the serial number 1 Camaro?
serial number 1 Camaro will be there.
my
Yeah.
Well, you do good with Camaros and Mustangs, but I think that's a little over your budget.
I doubt if it's going to be for sale, but it doesn't hurt to look. You're going to be right there. Now, Jay, you're going to need a budget on that, right?
Last year I spent $1 million, but I think I proved myself. We bought some great cars and sold them.
Bottom line, what's your budget this year? What do you want?
$1 million ought to do it.
Well, that $1 million club sounds like a pretty fancy event there. I'm glad I don't have to go on
Who
this.
said you were invited?
Brian, you might be going there.
I don't have anything going on. I was going to take a vacation. I got no reason to go.
Did you ever hear of Cowtown in Wichita?
I think Brian's mayor of Cowtown.
Yeah, well, anyway, there's a cast iron stove I need over there for our 32 covered wagon camper. You wanted a vacation. I think this would be a great time. They got old stuff over there.
I was thinking sandy beaches and palm trees, not cow pies and Cowtown.
It was not long after the motor vehicle became a familiar sight on American streets that the covered wagon camper came to be. Americans wanted to take their lives on the road, including the conveniences of the modern home, and covered wagon campers made that possible.
You know, the covered wagon campers were one of the very first campers. They only built them for a handful of years throughout the 30s and possibly the early 40s. And very few of them still exist today. They were made out of wood and leatherette, and they just fell apart, deteriorated, or burned to the ground.
Despite the economic hardships of the Great Depression, sales of covered wagons continued to set records throughout the 1930s, and the company proved innovative with their exclusive patent on their weatherproof exterior covering they called Shermanite. The different models of covered wagons ranged from $400 to $1,200, depending on the option selected by the customer. One of those optional features was a pot-bellied stove, an item easily acquired at the time, but which today might only be found in a place called Cowtown.
There's a cast iron stove I need over there, pot-belly stove for our 32 covered wagon camper.
So they actually had a wood-burning stove inside of a wooden RV.
That's why there's only 2 known to exist in the planet.
You know, we've got this 1932 covered wagon that we restored, and the only thing it was missing was this pot-belly stove. My dad wants it complete.
Greg has spent 2 fruitless years looking for a covered wagon pot-belly stove. Now, his efforts are about to show results.
My good friend Ryan tells me he's got one. He sent me a photo. It looks like it's the right one. It's got the covered wagon on it.
You got pictures of it. You should be able to verify it from there. Why don't you just UPS it out there? Why do I gotta go with?
That is a needle in the haystack to be able to find that. I want you to inspect this very well. The cast iron does crack, and once it cracks, it is junk. We didn't discuss price. He seemed like a gentleman. He is a longtime friend. He might just give you a good deal on it because it's the Auto Museum. I'm gonna put a budget of high as $10,000. I have to have it.
He can handle this.
Well, I think you'd appreciate the heater because I always catch you napping in the camper. So it's kind of funny, the only duty my brother has on this trip is to pick up a pot-bellied stove for my father.
Yeah, I got suckered into going on this trip looking for a stove. I'm not the Maytag man. Jay's got these big plans for this $1 million budget of his. I've got plans of my own of taking it. Well, if I'm going with, I want more of your budget than just the cost of a
Budget for what? For barbecues or?
I gotta buy something while you're down there besides a stove. If there's this high-end event with the first Camaro, who knows what kind of one-of-a-kinds they'll have there.
Buying the first Camaro would probably be cheaper than paying for your barbecues.
Brian, you got a budget for a cast iron pot-bellied stove, and that's it.
No, I'm gonna steal some of your budget.
We'll drag race for that, because down there, a guy has his own private drag strip, 8th mile strip. Brian and I can race for money.
Yeah, just take the stove out if you get it.
Hey, you're worried about the stove and not us?
Oh, yeah, I want that stove back in one piece.
The boys are off to Oklahoma with a stove to buy and $1 million to burn. The boys have traveled to the small town of Sallisaw, Oklahoma to begin Jay's $1 million buying tour.
All right, I've got a $1 million budget on this trip, and my plan is to buy lots of cars, good cars. This morning, I already got my eye on a 32 Ford hot rod. I'll buy that.
They've begun at a place called Pop's Garage, which has a very unusual feature.
I've seen everything from the coolest man caves to the coolest backyards, but I have never seen anybody that had their own drag strip in their backyard.
Before the boys buy anything, there's some budget business to address.
My goal today is to spend as much of Jay's budget as possible, if not the whole thing.
Brian's trying to get his fingers into my budget. He's not touching it.
I say we race for it.
For what?
For the budget. I need some money to buy that car.
You have no budget.
That's why we need to race. When I win, I get the budget.
A piece of the budget.
Every time we go driving with Jay, he always complains about my driving. I'd like to put it to the test and find out once and for all who's the better driver.
I'm up to the challenge on the drag strip. We'll see who wins.
The boys are ready to race with $500,000 on the line.
Lining these two cars up, there's no doubt in my mind which one was gonna win. That hot rod that I was driving, that had one heck of a motor in it. I even gave him a head start, and it wasn't even close.
Although the 32 Ford took an early lead, Brian's 32 Chevy crosses the line first.
I don't know what's worse, losing part of my budget or losing the race. Chevy Brian was running, had a little more engine. It was definitely the car, not the driver.
I mean, it's obvious that it's the driver. It's all the driver.
Brian buys both cars, and despite the result, Jay is happy. He's made the first dent into the $1 million budget.
I lost the race, but Ford's good merchandise. My brother and I, we each get to bring home a 32 coupe. How cool is that? The day's young, we're just getting started. I'm gonna buy a bunch of cars today.
The day is young, and Jay's excited to meet up with his good friend, OK Larry.
My name is Larry Oliver. I have a company called Classic Car Pal. We search the country for classic cars. I work with Jay at Volo. I heard that Jay had $1 million to spend on this trip, and I'm going to try to help him spend more than that.
Their first stop is the Midway Auto Group in Fort Smith, Arkansas.
We're Midway Auto Sales and Classic Cars, Inc. We do classic car sales. We also do some used car sales. We always look forward to Jay coming to visit. It's a good time, and he usually walks away with a couple of classics. The Riviera and the Thunderbird I really think would be up his alley. Oh yeah, I'm always excited to sell cars to Jay. Occasionally my brother visits up there and he'll send us pictures of our cars in their showrooms.
I bought a 64 Riviera today. Good piece of merchandise. They call it a personal luxury car. It's still got the sportiness of bucket seats and cool gauges and a shifter on the floor. Good car for an older guy that wants luxury and performance. The other car was a Hemi Charger, but it was a one-of-one color and he just wanted a lot of money for it. My $1 million budget is still mostly intact. We'll find some more cars.
Jay's next stop is a place that Brian has heard about but never seen.
Brought Brian to one of my secret places. Once he walked in, he seen some six-figure cars, and he knew the budget was going to dwindle.
And we pull up to this building out in the middle of nowhere, and I figured there's not going to be anything in this tin can.
Hello, guys.
Oh, Steve.
Hey, good to see you all again.
I was watching Brian. The look on his face was priceless when he walked in and seen a LS6 Chevelle on the floor.
He's saying that this is a secret spot. He made me wear a blindfold on the way here.
In a small town, most people don't think about something like this being here. Believe it or not, this is my hobby. We start from scratch on these cars, tear them down, and rebuild them back to what you see today.
Steve has known Jay a long time, and he's excited to show off the cars he's been working on, although they aren't yet in a state to be sold.
I've sold a number of cars to Jay. It's a lot better than having to take them to an auction and things like that. I'd just rather have Jay come by, look at them, he takes them, and we have a good partnership. Jay, I just happen to have one all ready for you. It's a 1970 Chevelle LS6, and this is the top of the line that GM built back in 1970, 450 horsepower.
That was the biggest advertised horsepower
That was
at
the
that
biggest advertised horsepower that was available. This is a 4-speed car, bucket seat, console, 410 gears in the rear, M22 transmission. This car has all the original equipment on it, from the radiator to anything that's under the hood.
It smells like a new car.
We tried to put them better than what GM built back in 1970.
Well, you accomplished that.
Jay is very happy to make a deal with Steve on the LS6.
I've got a lot of budget, but only one car was done. I wish there was more done. I wish I could take them all home tomorrow.
I hate giving up my budget, but the way that Steve restored these cars is unbelievable.
Jay's never understood why Steve doesn't go into business for himself.
I just don't like publicity. You know, I'm getting up in years now. I'll probably have to quit one of these days. My hobby will probably fade off in the sunset.
I'm going to keep buying cars from Steve. I'll have him out here in a wheelchair building these cars. I'm not going to let him quit.
Jay's secret stash pays off, but there's still a lot of cash to spend. The $1 million buying spree continues at an Oklahoma car corral, where OK Larry has located a 1949 Ford for Jay.
I was talking to a guy about a 4940 he has here. Nice red color with the gray interior. Looks fantastic. This thing's exceptional. The Volo Museum name does give me the edge because people know I'm for real and they know our checks are good.
Jay buys the 49 Ford before heading to a nearby car show, where there are plenty of great cars, but not all of them are for sale.
These people aren't looking to sell. So if he's going to try to get anybody to sell one of their cars, he's got his work cut out for him.
Hey, is this car for sale?
No, sir.
Hey, is this car for sale?
It is not.
Hey, is this your car?
Yes, it is.
Is it for sale?
No.
Oh, that's a popular answer today.
While Jay strikes out, movie buff Brian sees a piece of Americana he can't ignore.
I seen a replica of an American Graffiti car. The guy did it really to the nines, and it's really authentic. The original one, I don't believe even exists anymore. I might have some interest in that one.
Jay continues his search, but with very little luck.
Actually, a gremlin here at the show, and it's kind of cool to see, but there just isn't a big market for those cars. That whole era, mid-70s to mid-80s, not much collectible came out of that period.
Well, how you doing with my money?
My money, but I still have most of it.
I kind of figured it was going to go that way.
While the trip wasn't a total loss, there's still a lot of budget to spend.
I got a Tornado that's a one owner. I got a 71 Oldsmobile, a 64 Riviera. We got some great cars, but we're running out of time on this trip, and I still got a lot of money to spend, so I'm hoping I get some cars.
The boys are at Walzer Auto Group in Wichita, Kansas, where they've been invited to the $1 Million Motors charity black tie event. They've arrived early to see what kind of classics are on display.
They got a real mix of high-end exotic cars with the old classics. I put a pretty big dent in that $1 million budget. I could spend $1 million here at this location.
Brian is immediately drawn toward a 1971 Cabriolet.
The 280 SE Cabriolet that's here is a very well-restored car. I mean, it's an excellent, excellent specimen. I like it a lot because it reminds me of the one used in The Hangover. When they filmed The Hangover, they took these and cut the roofs off of the coupes to make them look like convertibles, but they had one hero car, which was a real convertible, and the production team messed up and they used it as a stunt car and absolutely destroyed the car. They actually offered it to me for $15,000 and I passed on it. That's how bad it was. But, you know, hey, it just made this car worth more because that's one less of them in the world.
The boys also take a look at a truly rare piece.
The first Camaro made is here right now. That would put a serious dent in our budget. We'd have to make a call to Dad.
Jay's normally not a fan of the one-of-a-kind cars like what I buy, but there is occasions where I'd like him to be. That is good merchandise besides being a collector car. And I'd love to spend Jay's $1 million budget on that. The only problem is the car's car's worth 6.
Next, Jay meets with Doug Sprinthall of Walser about a gorgeous 57 Lincoln and gets a taste of Walser's unique car dealership mentality.
The way Walser sells cars stems back to 2002 when one of the brothers looked over the horizon and said, I don't think people want to haggle and hassle anymore. The internet's going to change everything. So we decided to start putting our best price on all our cars, on the internet, on the newspapers, and not negotiating. It was really radical at the time, and it took a long time for the customers to get used to it, but once they did, it's really been amazing.
Jay loves the Lincoln and also enjoys the experience of the no-pressure sale.
Now, it's a 57 Lincoln, so it is possible that Matthew McConaughey was conceived right in the back seat.
Okay, well, without documentation, I'm not paying any extra. I don't know if I'd pay extra even with documentation.
It could be a slight deduct.
Maybe. It's been reupholstered. The 57 Lincoln is 1950s turquoise, and it's a convertible. I think they're just a great value. You can get a lot of car for the money now.
While Jay buys the Lincoln, Brian buys the Cabriolet. Now all that's left is to enjoy the evening.
Tonight we're expecting a wonderful crowd. Some of Wichita's finest and famous, some really proud car owners that want to show off their cars as well, and just a great event to raise a lot of money for the Wesley Children's Foundation. They came to me and said, we need a guys event, so what do you think? And I said, it's a car show. Bottom line, the car show. We have several private collectors here in Wichita. We decided to kind of ask for their vehicles to be on display. A lot of private collectors that don't show the vehicle outside of their garages. Everything from classic to vintage to just rare. Right now, about 25 vehicles here on display tonight. This is an upscale event, but as long as they have a tie, Jay and Brian are welcome.
Turns out this is a formal event tonight. Brian and I are not champagne, high-end event kind of guys.
Working at the museum, pretty much the only clothes I own are Volo branded. So all I can do for this event is wear my Volo shirt and put on my little blue tie.
With the $1 million buying spree at an end, the boys traveled back in time to a place called Cowtown in Wichita, Kansas, to pick up a pot-bellied stove for their father, Greg.
My dad's restoring a 1932 covered wagon camper, and he wants it completely authentic and original. And this was the one piece that we were missing.
But first, Brian and Jay decide to take a tour of Cowtown.
Cowtown's been here since the 1950s. It's the only place in the country has this type of history. Anything with historical significance, they'd load it on a truck, bring it here, drop it off. After they got 5, 6, 7 buildings, they put a fence around it and called it Old Cowtown Museum. Very popular with the kids. We run a lot of school programs through here, show them what it was like back in the day. As far as our most popular buildings for the fellas, it's gonna be the blacksmith shop. You can make knives, guns, swords, replacement parts for some of the rolling stock we've got. Not a lot of blacksmiths around these days. Ryan here works for the museum. He does a great job for us.
Yeah, I've known Greg from the Volo Museum for a few years now. Comes to me every now and then for blacksmithing projects. I love blacksmithing. It's a great feeling being able to pick up a chunk of rusted metal and use a fire and some hammers and turn it into whatever you need.
The boys try their hands at one of the oldest professions known to man.
Brian wasn't doing any of the work. He had to stand there and hold something. I was the one swinging the hammer.
Jay says he was doing the hard work, but I'm the one that had to watch out for his swing.
Their lesson learned, Ryan brings out the pot-bellied stove.
This must be the stove that we're coming to get.
Yeah, this is the one we had over in tutorial. That's not even our time period.
A lot of people get confused because of the covered wagon.
Yeah,
that was actually a camper from the 1930s. Finding one of these things just a needle in a haystack.
All right, so what do we owe you?
Well, you tell Greg he owes me one, and you better tell him if he stumbles upon late 1800s little giant trip hammer, give me a call. Big hammer, move a lot of metal real quick.
If we find one, we'll send it your way, because that's the last thing we need him to collect is more hammers.
All right. Let's go. Grab it. Yeah, you grab it.
You grab it. My dad's been looking a long time for one of these stoves. The camper's already restored, and this was the missing piece. It's good to know all these different people, because you never know who can help you out.
Thanks to the camaraderie of Old Cowtown, Greg now has the final component to complete his classic camper.
Okay, boys, tell me about your Oklahoma, your $1 million trip. How did we do?
Well, it turned out to be about a $500,000 trip. It was just tougher getting cars this year. We did bring back 10 cars and still have 4 more on their way. One of them was an LS6 Chevelle, full pedigree, all the papers perfectly restored. I've already got people there coming out to see it.
That'll pay for the trip.
Brian and I did drag race a 32 Ford against a 32 Chevy.
Why don't you tell Dad who won?
Who won?
Brian won.
So I was able to buy the car.
He must have cheated. I mean, they had to cheating.
There was no cheating. I just know how he drives.
Went to a Walzer Auto Group, and they had a real nice selection of some high-end cars. And
We even got to dress up and go to their black tie
black
affair.
tie affair.
Really? And did you guys have the attire?
I had a black collared shirt on.
And Brian, how about you? How did you do?
I picked up a Mercedes convertible that was a lot like the one from the movie The Hangover. It's not the actual car from the movie, but it is one just like it.
You should rig something up so inside the trunk of the Mercedes, you knock him or something.
I'm going to put you in there.
Yeah,
That's an idea.
They had serial number 1 Camaro. First Camaro ever built was at that show.
What was the problem?
Problem was it wasn't for sale. He said priceless.
He said priceless. He wouldn't sell it.
So he went to Cowtown, and I saw Ryan, and we ended up getting that pot-bellied stove. It was the real deal. It had the covered wagon on the front of it.
It said covered wagon right on there?
It had the logo right on the front, and it looked like it was fully restored. I mean, I thought it was brand new, but it's restored.
You're going to love the price, too. 0, free.
0?
He knows what we have here, and he wanted it to go to a good home.
Well, because it is a museum and it is going on permanent display. It's not for making money. It's for everybody to see. And now this camper is completed, and I never thought it would be. So that was a very, very, very good week.
This wasn't quite a champagne celebration. You know, if he spent the full $1 million, maybe, but it's a beer celebration.
To $450,000 back in our account and a hangover.
Here's to the hangover.
Here's to the hangover. A terrible beer. How could you?
Although Jay spent over $500,000 on the trip, it was the free and extremely rare pot-bellied stove that put the bigger smile on Greg's face, which just goes to show that some things really are priceless.
Whether we win or lose, it's another good week for the house. Volo House of Cars.